if I'm not mistaken. There we go. And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Hegum. I am one of the co-founders of the Accounting Alchemy Network, and we are here to inspire and inform our fellow accounting professionals to do great things in the world. For those of you who have been paying attention over the last year, we are now going into our second year, which is quite an accomplishment of really engaging accounting professionals in this conversation around how do we prioritize people and planet over profit. One of the terms that we like to refer to is this term called the regenerative accountant, right? Which is really somebody who, in my own words, is sort of moving beyond sustainability and really thinking about ways of giving back to the world and the earth in a way that helps us all to grow and thrive and be happy, healthy human beings in the planet. And so one of the things that we do believe is that accounting professionals do hold great power in their ability to influence the conversations that we're having around capitalism and money making and how business can be really a force for positive social transformation. And so we're super excited to have a guest with us today. I know Ingrid's going to introduce our guest, but as we move through today's experience, I want you to consider for yourself what bits and pieces you're hearing today that really could inspire you to shift how you work with your clients and the communities that you serve, because we do have a spotlight today with a practitioner who's practicing what we preach, which I think is really important to look at examples of people. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Ingrid, to introduce our fabulous guest and get us started today. Over to you, Ingrid.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, everyone. I'm Ingrid Edstrom, co-founder of the Accounting Alchemy Network, and I am really excited to introduce my dear friend, Mayumi Young. I first encountered Mayumi at Scaling New Heights, I think in 2018 or 2019. You were on the main stage talking about CPA moms, and your story blew me away. And since then, we've gotten to know each other a little bit better, and you have continued to blow me away at every freaking turn. And so I am just delighted that we get to share your story with our Accounting Alchemy audience. So yeah, if you would please go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, Mayumi.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that glowing introduction, and Matt, for really setting up the context for the conversation. I love what you guys are doing. So I'm just excited to be here and to give whatever examples or insights that I have about my own journey, my own experience. I'm more of a, I guess, traditional, typical accountant in terms of my trajectory. I worked in was Big Six at the time, and went into industry, and found myself at a very important point in my life where I felt like I had no meaning to my life. And I had a choice to make at that point. I had in my career all of the trappings and all of the, the outward expression of what should be a happy life. But internally, I would describe my life as being really dead inside. And so I took a radical step, one that I would say, if you're taking notes, this would be, don't do this. If you listen to these conversations, we're trying to create pathways that are better and healthier ways of getting into alignment. But this was what I felt like was my only way out of what felt misaligned. So I took a leap of faith. I quit my job. No safety net. I had what I would call retail therapy back then. So I had nothing saved, even though I was making good money. And I went to Hawaii to find myself and had a really like a spiritual experience. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself, which I have honored every day since. This was back in April 1st of 2000. So it's been quite a while that this sort of new life that I've created came from. And in that promise, I said that I would continue to be in service, but I had to be called. And whatever I was called to do, it had to make a difference. I can be an entrepreneur and play a profit game. I didn't have to be in a nonprofit or a charitable organization, but it had to make a difference, and I would not make an exception on that. And so I've since created 3 businesses. Each of them had a very specific social impact. And the one that I'm the CEO and founder of now is called CPA MOMS. And the work that I do and the social impact that we have lives around a belief that, we just believe that it's possible that women should be able to have both a successful career or firm and raise a happy family. And that's our core belief. And, my saying is always, if we have figured out in this world how to send a man to the moon, we can certainly solve this problem of work-life harmony, of really figuring out how to create cultures and firms that address the human and what they really need and want, and kind of change the entire game. And so hopefully that gives you a little bit of background of what got me to this point.
It does. Thank you, Mimi. And I would love to actually kick us off with a question, Ingrid.
Sure.
I've had the privilege of working with you in one of the initiatives that we've really undertaken since Appy Camp, around what started off as a conversation around creating parent-friendly workplaces, and has since evolved to this question of what is a humane workplace and how do we foster those types of environments for our employees and communities. But and I want us to talk about that in your practice. But but before we kind of dive into that, I want to kind of pause for a moment and just look at that moment of transformation for you, or with you. And I say that because I think one of the things that we notice, and I'll speak for myself here, but I think Ingrid might agree with me, is that there is almost a switch that gets flipped inside of the people who start to be enter into this work. They go through particularly the Game Changer Intensive, which is a collaboration that we have with some of the content from the Pachamama Alliance. And there's something that happens of oh, wow, there's this personal sort of transformative moment of realizing that something can be different, and that there's a different way of relating to the planet and to other people. And I don't know, I heard you talk about going to this Hawaii, and having this sort of transformation. So can you maybe put a little bit more of a spotlight on that transition for you, and in particular, what happened that helped you to move through that transformation? What was the inspiration or the motivation or that sort of source desire that helped you to kind of move through that shift?
I'll answer the second part first. What helped me move through it was pain. I was in a lot of pain, and the pain I felt was from being so out of alignment with my truth and who I really was and who I knew myself to be. And I was in my late 20s. So I really was just becoming clear about who I was, that I said that I was, and not some inherited version of myself. And so I felt like I was born with a lot of gifts that I wanted to give to the world. And yet I felt like I wasn't doing any of that. I felt like a cog in a machine. I was just working for money. And that was completely uninspiring to me. I'm like, great. So I have all this money, and then someday I'm going to die and they're going to throw dirt in my face. And what was it all for? And so I longed for meaning. I wanted my life to matter. And I just knew that it didn't at the moment. And I just thought to myself, why am I here? If I couldn't answer the question, what am I doing here? What is this for? And because I didn't have an answer, that really caused me a great deal of pain. And so there was the catalyst of the pain, but there was a seed that had been planted earlier on. I was about 19, and my mother's partner of 11 years died very quickly from cancer, actually. And at that point in my life, anyone that I knew that had cancer survived. So I didn't know. I mean, I was just very naive. I didn't know, oh, you could die. And I was presented with the reality very early on, which was, I believe, a blessing and a gift, that tomorrow is not promised. This was somebody who had saved up. He'd done all the right things, put all this money in the bank so he could go to Hawaii one day. I didn't realize the significance of me going to Hawaii and that experience until much later in my life. But he never went. He used every dime of the money that he saved to live a few more months, and not well. And so I had this feeling of, tomorrow's not promised. Go out and do and be the person that you want to be today. And so that experience, combined with the pain that I was experiencing emotionally, spiritually, was a catalyst for me to say, go live, go. It's time to live your life. I don't know what it is. It was a leap of faith, and I was very much held and guided to the path that I'm on now, which I consider to be a very much a created and invented life. Whereas prior to that, I would say was a very much a default life. Did that answer the question? Oh, I think Matt's frozen.
Oh, I think he is frozen. I think it answered the second part of that question, I guess. So that was the seed
Catalyst.
From which it came. What was the moment? Oh, we lost Matthew. Matthew is traveling right now, so he'll be back. What was the moment where that turned into, oh, I found it?
Yeah, I mean, the moment where I made the choice, I was sitting in my boss's office. I had at that point been promoted to international finance director, and I had been traveling from San Diego to Amsterdam and back like every 2 weeks. And I had taken the position of someone else. And I, for a good 3 to 6 months before I had worked out the actual contract. And I went to negotiate the compensation, and I had decided that I wasn't going to ask for more and try to negotiate down. I basically presented it in a way that was going to be non-negotiable. And I said to myself, well, if they don't accept this, which was significantly less than my predecessor, who happened to be male. And for me, I was already doing the job and then some. And so I figured this should be a no-brainer for them. And I had chosen that if they did not accept it, that I would leave. So I knew like that this was going to be a new life, and they didn't. And they were shocked to realize that I didn't sit there to negotiate. I was like, I'm not going to negotiate for my value. If you haven't worked it out yet, then it's not for me to convince you. So I resigned. And then I planned my trip and I was gone.
Wow, that is so beautiful and brilliant. And I feel like there are so many people probably watching this replay, particularly the women, who really need to hear that need to hear that confidence and being able to step into our value. So thank you for being an inspiration in that way. And
sure. I've never shared that, actually.
Really?
Asked me the question. I've shared the other pieces, but I've never shared that's how that all went down. Yeah.
So you and I have gotten to know each other pretty well over the last handful of months. I mean, we knew each other before, like I've even had you on my original podcast years ago. But really got to know each other the last handful of months through this program that we've been in with Lynn Twist and Sarah Vetter through the Soul of Money Institute called the Sophia Circle. And so I've gotten to get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Oh, hey, Matthew's back. And hear a little bit more of the depth behind some of these things. So a lot of the things that we've been talking about recently have been involving really just trusting the universe to set us on the right path. And as Lynn Twist says, these things don't happen to us, they happen for us. Yes. And by having that clarity of intention in the choice of, if my value is not going to be recognized here, then I'm going to go. And choosing to go, how did the universe show up for you? Like, when did you realize that that was so clearly the right choice and that you were on the path you needed to be on?
The resignation and the trip all happened in very short order. So I think I gave more time than I needed to be respectful of the transition, but I had already been planning my future. So I had at that moment no money saved, and I had a new mortgage. And yet I felt surprisingly calm about the whole situation. Like normally you would think, time to freak out. How are you going to do this? Oh, I got to take a job. And I had told myself, I'm going to give myself 3 months. If something doesn't manifest in those 3 months, I can always go back and get another job. But give myself this opportunity. And so I took my mom to Hawaii. I used all my miles and things that had been traveling back and forth to Europe 50 bazillion times. So I had hotel miles and airline miles. And I went, and she went home after a little bit, and I stayed and I camped. And I had an experience. I went to Maui and I was camping in Haleakala. And I went to the summit of Haleakala because I got really cold and I wasn't prepared for the cold nights. And at like 4 a.m., I'm like, okay, I'm going to go watch the sunset. What else am I going to do at 4 a.m.? And I had sort of this spiritual moment up there, watching the sunrise above the clouds. And I made an agreement with myself and the universe at that time. I was just like, okay, you've got this, basically. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do next. No idea. I didn't even know where to start. But I felt like you've got this. And I just had this incredible sense of peace as I drove down the mountain and went back to my campground. And literally, if I can explain it this way, my normal mode of being, most human beings, is to have a constant machine talking in your brain about all the things I should be worried about, thinking about, planning for, things I need to do. And it's just this doing machine. I need to do this so I can have that, so then I can be happy. And it's do, have, be. We live our life and do, have, be. And a flip switched when I had this calm come over me. And the word actually is peace. And anybody who follows Dr. Stephen Hawking's or reads the Jerry and Esther Hicks books around measuring your emotional map of consciousness and basically vibrational map. There's actual vibrations that have been mapped for like love and joy and peace is mapped at 600 out of a ranking of 1,000. Well, I had leapfrogged through this act of courage, which is measured at 200. I had leapfrogged up to this measure, this level of peace. And I got there accidentally. I didn't do something like, oh, I have to go to peace. And I didn't even know about map of consciousness for years and years after this. But the experiences always lived with me and I wanted to capture it back. So I was trying to figure out what was it? How did I get there? And how do I get it back? And so peace is measured at 600. And there's something profound to say about these higher levels of vibration. And that is, we are always out there trying to save the world, have the impact, save the planet, do the thing that's going to make the difference. I've been wired to make a difference from the very beginning. But the higher level we are in our own vibrational energy, the bigger the difference that we make by just being a lighthouse. There is nothing that we actually need to do out there to make that difference. So they say that if you're at 600, you actually have a positive impact on over 10 million people just by being a lighthouse, just by managing our own vibration. And so I say that because when I got to peace, there was an absence of all worry and concern. So how did the universe show up for me? Like magic. Like everything I needed was provided exactly when I needed it. I'll give you a simple example. I hadn't taken a shower, a hot shower. I had other ways of bathing and keeping myself clean, but I hadn't had a hot shower in about a week. And I was walking along the beaches of Maui and I noticed a little boy, a little 2-year-old, just so peaceful, so beautiful, had a conversation with his parent. Oh, sorry, before this. And I'm thinking, it'd be nice to have a hot shower, but not like I do now. Like, oh God, I need a hot shower. When am I going to put that in my calendar? It's on the to-do list. Like it's a thing. No, it was a thought. It came, it went. I see this little boy. I start talking to his parents and they say to me, we just chat up. and they say, come over for lunch. Let's treat you to lunch. And when you come over, you can take a hot shower. I promise you, I never, ever mentioned a desire for a hot shower. It wasn't even in my space at that moment. And they offered it up. Really? Right. And so, you could say, oh, that's just a coincidence. Oh, that just, but I have evidence. I could tell you example after example after example of things like that. I contained zero worry, zero concern. There was no agenda. There was no managing, no to-do list, no calendar. It was just being and pure peace. And it was the quietest sound I've ever heard because my brain wasn't going the whole time. I happened to get enough money that paid for my lifestyle for 3 months because of the way a tax thing fell out. Universe showed that after I left. I was held, I was taken care of, and I was guided. And then 2.5 months into my 3 months, I had a family member ask me for help. That help resulted in a moment of inspiration, which launched my first business, which was designing financial literacy curriculum for kids in schools. So everything that my heart desired was provided, and it was beautiful in every scenario. And there's an incredible book, if those of you are interested in this type of living, which is interesting, and I've shared it with Ingrid. It's my favorite book, and it is called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And his journey in his life very much described what I experienced during what was about an 18-month period of my life. And so I recommend it for those of you who are looking for something where you just like live in that surrender, live in that just being in active service, being in service of your own gifts and talents, and just trusting in the process and trusting that you'll be taken care of along the way.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mayumi. And thank you for recommending that book to me just a handful of months ago, because it was so funny when you first recommended the book to me. I did the thing that I generally do when somebody recommends a book to me, which I take it very seriously. And I have a stack of reading lists. Like, I really enjoy reading and listening to books. And oh boy, do I have homework. And in that moment, I was like, no, look, I'm adding it. I'm downloading it on my Audible right now. And next time I go on a road trip or something like that, I'll get to it. I'll push it a little closer to the top of the queue after I finish the one that I'm on. But then you and I got off our call and I had someplace else to go. I got in the car and the book started auto playing all on its own. And just like you were saying about those coincidences, when it's one after another like that, you simply cannot make this stuff up. And just in the last handful of months, the surrender experiment changed my life too. And I've gotten to the point just in the last handful of months where I don't work for a living anymore. I simply choose to show up in my highest self, in my best service to the world, in whatever that means, giving generously and freely in ways that feel like it's in consensual relationship with my being. And I trust the universe to take care of the rest. And when somebody, particularly an accounting professional, says to me, oh, that's not going to work. What's your business plan? Prove it. I say, well, I've delegated the proving it to the universe. That is no longer part of my job description. And yeah, it's working. It's working really well. And I just, anytime I have that doubt, that uncertainty, I sit down and meditate and try to let it go and just say, okay, I am in trust fall, recognizing that there is no bottom.
You are such a beautiful example of the surrender experiment. Like, your life you're a blueprint for what it could look like, to exist in both worlds, the physical material world and the spiritual one. And not very many people can straddle both worlds at the same time. Most people find themselves lost in the spiritual world, and it's hard to ground them into everyday reality, but we're accountants. And so accountants find themselves mostly in this physical material realm and have a hard time crossing and bringing their spirit into who they are and what they do. We're not human doings. We're human beings. And this is an opportunity for us to live and breathe from, you know, and live that human experience, but live from our soul, from our spirit. And I will, and I'll add that, you know, coincidences, the retitled, if you want to research this more, are really synchronicities. And there's a whole world about that. But I think, you know, you really are a living, working example. So people are like, what does it look like? How do you do it? But Ingrid, like I go in and out. Like I'm there, I'm out, I'm there, I'm out. And the reality is, it's not a place or a destination. Michael Singer got there and stayed. I got there, stayed for 18 months, and I popped out. And, you know, and so you know, there's a sort of a dance that you get to play. And it's a muscle that you actually can build. So for those that are like, hey, I don't want to quit my job and destroy my life in order to have this experience, well, there are actual practical ways to get there, meditation being one aspect of, and one possibility. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't have a VA, I have a UA, a universe assistant. So if I lose something, I need something, I just give it up and bring.
I love that. Thank you. And thank you for that boost of recognition. You know, it's one of those interesting pieces where sometimes we need that reflection from the outside. And that's something that I've been actively working on for years. I remember the moment about 15 years ago when I was talking with my massage therapist, who was also a client at the time, about, you know, I'm feeling this divide between my professional life and my kind of spiritual, deeper life. You know, like there's this division between my values and what I have to do to make money and live and work. And it's like I'm constantly going back and forth over this line of banality and bedlam. You know, the spiritual, the ecstatic, the vibrant, the beautiful. And it's like, I need to figure out how to weave these together. And the moment I said, I need to figure out how to weave these together, I basically started doing just that, working on what does it look like to weave these together. And now that's essentially what I teach. It is so woven together that's what I do with accounting professionals in the Roundtable Labs community, in my private coaching practice. And I love what you said, Mayumi, about being a lighthouse. And I love that your business basically built a beautiful lighthouse specifically for moms. And I want to ask you what the story is behind getting that started and why moms?
Yeah, great question. So in 2008, the world went through its economic downturn, and I was asking the universe what I was supposed to do. Tell me what you want me to do. And again, I have an agreement. If I'm called, I'll answer. So I was tapped on the shoulder a few times while I was asking the question, oh, can you help me with my accounting? I'm like, I don't do accounting anymore. I'm still a CPA, but I'm not a practicing accountant anymore. So I kind of did one of those and, can you help me with my accounting? And went, that's twice in less than 30 days. What's going on here? And when the third time happened and I tried to slough it off again, I realized, okay, wait a minute. I think I'm being called. So it's not like it's like ding dong, I'm here, the universe is here, we have a request. It doesn't show up like that. Generally, I know that it's a calling because it's something that I resist. I don't want to do it. But when it came, I said, all right, well, I'm not a practicing accountant. I don't see how I'm making a difference by being an accountant. So what is this about? And I remembered back again, seeds get planted early on in my life and I pay attention and they grow over time. And I remembered when I was at public accounting, I watched really very successful women go on maternity leave. They earn their CPA. We know how hard that is. And they never came back. I call it the one-way revolving door. And I thought, what a shame. I wasn't confused why they didn't come back. I worked in the same place they did. I completely understood it. And for me, it felt like they had to choose. They had to choose between their career or their family. And it was not a difficult choice for most people to make. Well, it was a difficult choice, but when push came to shove, most of them chose their family. But I just thought, why should you have to choose? Why should you have to choose? That's silly. We can do better. And so seed planted. I was coaching a woman to get back into, after being a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, and gave her a client, and, thought, gosh, I was coaching entrepreneurs around their money. They weren't getting the support that I felt that they needed. I remembered the woman that I was helping get back from being a stay-at-home in my revolving door, and my brain just went clink. What if we could help elevate what entrepreneurs needed by giving them professional CPAs, and we could provide the moms with an environment that they didn't have to choose between their career and their family, and just leveled the whole thing. I wanted to create win, win, win. So it just was an idea at first. I'm like, all right, I'll help you, but I really want to help other CPAs who are moms build, serve them. And I started it, and it worked beautifully, very quickly. And I realized, whoa, I have to get this together. And we became an agency. And then in 2020, we actually became a franchise. But my impetus, my drive was to really solve that problem, to really solve two problems: elevating the service and the quality of work at what I wanted to be affordable prices for entrepreneurs, and elevating the platform or the career opportunity for a woman who happened to be a CPA and a mom. And then that became, I don't want to have my own firm, which I only had for about 2 years. I want to help these professionals have their own practice. So I spent the remainder of my time, in over 10 years now, helping CPAs who are moms launch their own practice from a standing start. So going from a job or maternity leave or whatever, and they're like, I don't know what to do, and it's scary and it's risky. And I'm like, if I can create a platform, an ecosystem that is really a lot of done for you, would you take that leap? Would you go do the thing that you've dreamed about doing and have that control of your schedule and flexibility and be able to raise your own family? If we could do that, right down to providing leads and clients and, platforms and tech and billing services and like hiring services. I put everything in that I felt was needed to actually create an environment that was suitable for somebody who didn't have the time to go through that whole learning curve and still wanted to have something of her own. And I think, what I'll say about the industry, and really this is true for any, I'm not going to pick on the accounting industry, I think we could say this is true in any industry, is that we kind of take what we inherit, the design of something. And there's a phenomenal story that illustrates this, which I may have time to share, but I'm talking too much, but I'll be quiet in a second. And that is, we don't question the things that we get. We don't question the design of it. And I'm somebody who really is about challenging what is accepted in order for the greater good. And so I don't accept the current design of the typical accounting firm. I believe that we can do better. I believe that we can solve all the problems, that we can have humane workplaces, that people can be deliriously happy, that we can eradicate diseases, and that we can cultivate environments where having a family is normal and celebrated and not feared and hidden and chastised and criticized, where people can be of any orientation and feel safe and feel welcome and at home. Like, there's so much that we can be doing, but we cannot do it, in my belief system, inside of the current design, because it's not designed for that outcome. So let's redesign it. Let's create a new model and use that model as an example of what's possible for those that need a source of inspiration, that need a blueprint for how to create a better environment that's suitable for everyone. And that's really all we're trying to do, is create a blueprint, create a model and share that model. We're an open book. Like, this is how we're doing. This is what we do, so that others will copy what we're doing to better their environments, their teams, for all stakeholders, for their communities, for their teammates, for their clients, for their families. We're not going to do this one person at a time. This is a collective effort. And the fact that you are creating spotlights, that you're creating an an entire environment of people who are like raising their hand, like I'm in, I'm going to be part of the solution. You don't need that many of us to create a movement. And I love that you guys, and I don't know if you've ever talked about this, but I love the use of the word alchemy. Just study that word and what that really means. It's, you know, there's synergy. 1 + 1 is 3 or more, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The synergy. Alchemy is a level astronomically higher than that, which is where magic lives. It's where you put collective thinkers together and you create solutions that there's no agreement that could ever exist on the planet. Like things that everyone decided weren't possible, now they become possible. That's what happens at the level of alchemy. And so to be just even part of the conversation, listening to the podcast, participating in the conversations, being part of the group, that's where we're going to have and effectuate change on a massive level. And it's not going to take that many of us to do. So got on my soapbox. I don't even know what the question was anymore, but hopefully I answered the question that you asked. Sorry.
You gave,
Not quite.
yeah, you gave a lot of beautiful things, and so thank you for that, Mayumi. I guess I want to like focus on that alchemy piece for a moment, and maybe get more specific around, you know, around the opportunity that there is to be the lighthouse, right? And so when you were talking about being the lighthouse and sort of just the whole story about CPA moms, and I just started thinking about, you know, how the challenge, like one of the challenges that we have is we are straddling, you know, two worlds in essence, the world that we've adopted and have been born into, and the quote, as Charles Eisenstein says, the quote, more beautiful world we know our hearts know is possible, right? There's this other version of a world that we see as possible, right? And I think in particular in the accounting industry, because of the white male domination and the hierarchical systems and all of the social and cultural pressures around that to maintain the systems around capitalism, that it can be very hard, I think, to actually not only like get out of that world and into some version of the new one, right? There can be a lot of, you know, personal, deep and transformation that has to occur, and some of that, frankly, is trauma based, right? And so it's not an easy thing to just be like, all right, come flip the switch and go into this new beautiful world, because there's deep work sometimes that has to be done. And so I guess where I get curious about this, for you is, you know, you are working with this ecosystem of CPA moms, and you're helping them to establish these businesses that are humane, that are sort of a reflection of this future that's possible. And I think about your work and what you could teach us as leaders of other firms and practices. It's like, how do you help? And I know this is a doing question, so maybe you can respond with the form of being, but anyway, this is a doing question. I'll be clear about that. How do you work with your moms when you see these like remnants of these old systems maybe embedded in their behaviors or their beliefs, and knowing that you're this sort of coach, this guide, this mentor, right? Because for me, it's like, there are firm leaders out there who believe what we believe and understand this stuff, but maybe they're struggling to be that agent of transformation. Maybe they're struggling to be that lighthouse because they don't exactly know how to step into their power and their influence to encourage others to shift and evolve and grow. So I'm curious, like what advice do you have for people who sit in this sort of leadership position, wanting to be able to mentor their clients or their team members to this new future?
I was taught many years ago that the context is decisive. And what that means is the context is kind of like the bowl or the container of which holds all of the content. So the content we're talking about are things like what the doings of an accounting firm, like how do we create more flexibility, flexible work environments? How do we become more humane? How do we write the doings? That's all the content. But the container, the firm itself, the design, the ecosystem, the culture is what defines or guides how that content will live in the world. So let me give you an example. You can take all the same people and put them in a firm. But if the leader creates a environment or a context or a culture, or other words to use, that is very much about the client comes number one, get it done at all costs, 24/7, then you're going to have, even with all the same content, the same people, the same type of clients, you're going to have a particular environment. It's going to give everyone an experience. And that experience governs what people do, what they believe, their behaviors, etc. Well, many of us were trained and developed in our professional life in cultures like that. Client comes first. It's an ideology, it's a belief system. And we adopt these beliefs and make them the truth of who we are without questioning or challenging them, even if they don't feel right, even if they're not a match. Because when you're young and you're learning, you adopt whatever environment you go into. So the advice I would give to a leader of a firm is start with changing the culture, the design. That has to start with the leader themselves first. Because I say, know thyself and to thyself be true. You have to determine what you're doing this for first. What is your motivation? Why do you even have a firm? Really? Is it just to pay your bills? Or are you really motivated by some greater good that you want to do? It could be that you want to employ as many people. I met a woman recently who was Native American. She wanted to serve her Native American community. That meant something to her. It doesn't matter. It's so personal to you. But the most important thing about living life in general, whether you're an accounting firm owner or, bus driver, it doesn't matter. It's your life, it's your journey. And the key is to find, know what your truth is, know what true north looks like. What is your purpose and your reason for being? And then look to align your life and your work to that truth. So once you can define what's important to you, what matters, and you can create your culture and your environment to just be a vehicle to express that purpose. I say this all the time. I shape the direction of CPA Moms based on my personal preferences. If there were a new leader, there would certainly be a culture, but the decisions that would be made and the things that we would focus on would be distinct because they would have their own personal preferences. So to separate the two is virtually impossible. And I wouldn't even necessarily recommend that. Everybody who's there should have a reason, should be getting value out of being there. Everybody, not just the owner, every stakeholder, every person on that team. We ask them, what's important to you? And how does this enterprise contribute to your personal life? It may have nothing to do with the business. So I think that's the way to start. And I want to address one thing about the word hard. And I agree with you. It's one of the greatest challenges that a human being can make, and that is to align to their truth, because it can take an enormous amount of courage, because you might have to give some stuff up, things that are sacred cows, things that you've always had, things that make you feel safe and certain. But in giving those up, you step into a world of uncertainty. And that's what's hard. It's not like the challenge of doing it isn't necessarily the thing. It's just summoning the courage to do something new that's honors your truth. And I would say that, yes, I agree with you 100%, Matthew, that it's hard. It is one of the most challenging things a human can do. And it's harder not to. It's harder on your soul and your spirit to deny yourself the opportunity to live that life that you deeply desire. I believe, and this is Napoleon Hill, I believe that just the mere presence of the desire is evidence of your capacity to fulfill it. You wouldn't be seated with a desire that you couldn't have. So you already know that it's possible the minute the desire is there. So there are people who don't have a desire to do what we're talking about. That's great. But those who have that feeling of being compelled into something new, something bigger than they understand or can imagine for themselves, the more we deny ourselves the opportunity to follow through on that, the harder it is to live in our own skin. And that's where the pain was. I denied. And I got to a point where it was so painful not to be that person that I had to. So, so I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Totally. Yes, totally. Thank you. Yeah, no, and Ingrid, I don't know if you want to go this direction or not, but I do want to kind of shift into the conversation around the humane workplaces. But
exactly
before I do,
where I
Ingrid,
wanted to go.
Okay, great. No, exactly. Thank you. Yay. All right. So then I'll shift us in that direction. So yeah, Mayumi, that, I thank you. Yes, heard. And I think creating space in our workplaces for people to be a little bit messy in these transitions, right, is I think part of the conversation that comes up for me, because it's like, oh, in order to have these conversations, you have to be willing to see the pain and or the joy or just the emotions of this other person in front of you in your office, and know that they do have a life beyond the confines of that computer at that desk doing those things for those clients, is to be able to see the whole person. And really, that's, I think, part of what we're working on with this conversation around the humane workplaces. So could you maybe share some of your reflections on this conversation that we're having about humane workplaces, and maybe give us some context as to what you see occurring in that conversation as it unfolds?
Yeah, I would say, yes, it's very messy and the work is never done. So let's just eliminate this whole mysterious, I just gave up all pretenses of looking good a long time ago, right? I'm transparent to a fault. There's going to be an ongoing list of things that are not a match for what you envision, but man, shoot for it. And, at least the attempt to create something better is better than doing nothing. Right. And so do we have it perfected? Do we have all the answers? No. Are we always learning? Yes. Do we take those lessons and do something with it? Yes. Constantly. So messiness is part of it, and being willing to be okay with it not being at level 10 is an important piece of this journey. My reflections of humane workplaces are that there's just some really fundamental things that I think we intended to teach our children as they were growing up. I think things like kindness and care and consideration and acceptance. And it's interesting because it's I don't know if it happened during the Industrial Revolution or what happened, but human beings in the workplace, I think, became objectified in many respects, like machinery. Like, you're here to turn a knob or to make me and my shareholders money. And that's been the MO. We still have that governing most of our businesses because we're still in the whole shareholder mindset. And my company and others like me have taken a stand for a stakeholder model, which can be codified inside of changing the organizational structure to a for benefit company. So my company is actually a public benefit corporation, or a PBC, on our way to becoming an actual B Corp, which is a whole certification, which puts a flag in the ground that says, hey, I am aligning myself to all stakeholders winning. It's not just about shareholders winning. And so my reflections start with, you've got to take a stand somewhere. You have to start somewhere on how you're addressing the needs of everyone that at the level of a human being that is connected in any way to your business. That is yourself, your family, your team, their families, your clients, their families, your community that you're a part of, the planet from which you source materials, put things in the ground, trash, everything and anything. We're all part of this collaborative effort. If Mother Earth decided one day that she just wasn't going to turn her lights on, or excuse me, the sun decided she wasn't going to turn her lights on for us, we'd all have a serious problem. Right. And so to think that we are not in partnership with Mother Earth, with the sun, with nature, with the trees that give us air, with the people that we're a part of, we have to wake up. We have to wake up. I mean, I don't know how to say that any gentler or any nicer. It was like time to wake up. The planet is hurting, people are hurting, and it's time to acknowledge that what we've done hasn't worked. And so I have just chosen to serve a particular segment of the population, and that is moms and the challenges that they have around being able to care for their children and having the time to raise their own children instead of sending them to daycare, to be present for them in their lives. We could take any social issue or something that matters to the people involved and choose to create an environment that addresses that, solves that, embraces and enhances that quality of life. But it starts first and foremost for me, and this is the culture we have, is just to actually care about people, legitimately and authentically care about one another. Life happens to all of us, and we're all doing our best. We really are. And when those moments where life is happening, all you want to know is that people have your back, that you'll be accepted, that you can take that minute to go address a personal matter and not have fear of losing your job, not have to hide this personal thing that's happening for fear that you'll be looked at as unproductive, or, we're not human production. We're not machines. We're here to contribute. And I think we just need to listen more and care more. I don't know how to make it any more. I don't want to overcomplicate it. For me, that's really been as simple as it is. It's like, what matters to you matters to me.
That's so beautiful. And I also want to acknowledge, we do have a handful of people watching on Facebook, and we've got Marriott Martinez and Donnie Shimoto lighting up the chat with the yes, preach, sister, basically. So just to read off a couple of these comments, Donnie was just saying, yes, all stakeholders matter. And Marriott earlier was saying, as if by magic, really loving the planet over profit, and so much of the conversation we've had so far. So thanks to each of you for contributing. And I would love to invite us to check in about just kind of what's next in these humane workplaces conversations, because these are conversations that you are leading as we're developing decentralized leadership within the Accounting Alchemy Network, where anyone who understands the culture and what it is we're trying to create here can step forward and be the change that we want to see in the world. And you have stepped forward thoroughly in leading those conversations on a monthly basis. And I would love it if perhaps you can give just a snippet of what's been discussed so far and what's up next for those conversations for anyone who might be interested in joining those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. We started for quite a while, and this is really open to everyone. Again, if you have like this tinge of, gosh, that sounds really interesting, I should be involved, say yes. Just say yes and don't worry about the details, and go and check it out. And then you can make the choice later, right? Really, we started with an examination of what we felt were the key values, if you will, what was important about and defining what these terms mean. And really in that whole initial discovery process, we moved, as you described earlier, from sort of how do we create more childcare, improve childcare in the workplace, to how to create humane workspaces. And that was really because as much as we tried to stay in that narrow topic, we found that in order to create a better environment where childcare and other concerns like that would be properly addressed, we had to address the bigger, more systemic issues of, like, you got to start by caring about people. And then from that, a good byproduct would look like, this. And where we landed most recently in this evolution of our conversation is we really want to come up with a working model, one that can be implemented and executed and modeled. And, we raised our hand and said, whatever we come up with in this community, I am raising my hand, and anyone else who has a firm can volunteer to do the same, which is to take the ideas and the principles, because we're not just about kumbayaing around the fireplace. I mean, I don't know about all of you, but I'm busy. You're busy. Everyone here has a lot that we're up to. So it's not satisfying for me to just talk about things that don't go anywhere, nor is it for anyone here. We're about, how does this actually take action? How does it take root in reality to actually effectuate change in the world? So we're really at the step now where we're taking some of these core principles and ideas and coming up with a model for what a firm that addresses what we believe the values and the measures of success, if you will, of a humane workplace, what that looks like, and actually puts that into the blueprint and the ecosystem of their environment, which we are intending to adopt. Then we can say, this isn't working very well. We're missing a piece here. We can go back almost like a laboratory and say, well, this is working really well. What can we learn from that? What can we share with others about how this got implemented and what made that successful, and why are we challenged over here, and what other ideas can we do to change this? This way we have an entire group where we're actually not just coming up with an idea, but we're actually getting to make the adjustments in real time in the real world, so that then that blueprint gets shared, and anyone who wants to model it can, and anyone who wants to understand how to successfully implement it can. And it's about a share economy. It's about, this isn't mine. This is a proprietary. Humane workplaces is not proprietary methodology. It's for all of us. And this is really where we step into collaboration energy, which is really the energy that we as a world are starting to step up into. So please, I just encourage and invite anyone who is even remotely interested in this possibility for themselves. You could be completely selfish about it and be like, I want that for my firm. Great, come, because then we can help you. And you can be another example, another working model that we can tinker with this whole idea with and see it come to life. Or if you're just, a thought leader and you've got a vision, you've got ideas, your ideas are welcome. And we've had so much great input from such a diverse group, people who are working in corporate, people have their own firms, people who are coaches, people, I'm not even a firm, people are practitioners. It doesn't matter. Your perspective is what matters. And each unique point of view helps create a more cohesive and comprehensive model and future for everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited about those conversations. And it also loops right back to the Lyceum we had last month, the social forum on culture KPIs, and how we can start measuring these things. How can we lean test them and develop the key performance indicators that demonstrate to us what's working, what's not, recognizing that, yeah, this is warm data. It's subjective, and that doesn't make it irrelevant. That our subjective experience matters a great deal. And that everyone's subjective experience matters, and that that's okay. We can make sure that those things matter, and we can prioritize our people and planet over profits and still have a healthy, effective business.
Absolutely. And not every firm has to take it all on.
Yeah.
do your one piece, the thing that inspires you. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to save the planet and the people and the thing and the and I'm going to do the, no, I'm not taking all that on. You know, so, you know, we can just stay in our lane, and each piece, it's just part of this beautiful tapestry. We'll all be part of the beautiful tapestry.
Yeah. So with that, the time has been whipping by. We have all of a minute or two left. Matthew, do you have anything to toss in here before we get some closing thoughts?
No, just thank you, Mayumi. I mean, I just want to underscore that comment you made about not taking it all on at once, right? I think that's really important, particularly when you think about it from a firm perspective, right? Where you're leading others, just like find one thing to work on together and start there. I think people, you know, it's like you'll get better and you'll increase your capacity over time. But I think starting with one thing is a really important milestone. So thank you, Mayumi. Over to you.
Yeah, you're
Ingrid.
welcome. And I'll just leave one last thought, and I know we have to go. The idea of a lighthouse, I believe very, very strongly that we're all lighthouses. There's not like, oh, Ingrid, she's a lighthouse. Oh, Matthew, he's a lighthouse. Yes. And so is each and every one of us. I think the work that we all get to do is to take the dimmer switch off. It's not that we're not all shining brightly. It's just some of us have dimmed our light. That's all.
Yeah. Well, and I love shining a light on other people's lighthouses. So that's exactly what these spotlight lyceums are for. So thank you so much, Mayumi, for joining us today. And yeah, we've got hearts going up the screen, and this was such a great conversation. And we'll keep the conversation rolling in the Facebook and LinkedIn discussion groups. And yeah, if any of you watching have any questions for Mayumi about any of this, please feel free to post and just tag us, and we will keep this conversation rolling. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.